So today we're going to make a mutton durum biryani. Now there are hundreds of biryanis and every time I make one online it seems to do really well. So I'm going to share with you another one of my favorites. We're actually going to use lamb because mutton's kind of hard to find in some places, but lamb shanks like we're going to use, they can be a lot easier to attain, especially in Australia and the US. But by all means, if you can get your hands on some bone-in mutton, then use that instead. One of the other things that we're going to do is make our own biryani masala, and we need to do that first, so let's get that done. Now I really encourage you to make this masala yourself. It makes a huge difference. Now if you can't find some of the ingredients or you're short of time, then a garam masala will work. Masala just basically means spice mix. It is worth the time to do this yourself and it doesn't take that long. So this is what we've got. Ground turmeric powder, coriander seeds, cumin seeds, caraway seeds, green cardamom, black cardamom, cinnamon, black pepper, red chili, bay leaf, mace, and kasuri methi, which is fenugreek leaf. We've also got some nutmeg, which we need to grate. We're going to toast them all. So we've got a dry pan over a medium heat, and we're going to add everything apart from the nutmeg. And we're just going to grate that nutmeg in there. Then we're just going to toast this over a medium heat till it gets nice and fragrant before we grind it all. The other thing I'm going to do is break up the cinnamon stick just so I can go through the grinder a bit easier. So now these are nice and fragrant. We're going to put them into this here. It's actually a coffee grinder, but they work really well as spice grinders as well. You can just use one of those small ones that has a little blade in it, or if you don't have one of these, a mortar and pestle will work just as well. Hot tip, don't grind coffee in this once you've ground this in it though. And there we go. I'll tell you what, it smells pretty good in here. There's our biryani masala. So now for the onions, red onions or shallots in half. If you got any of this green stuff, just pull that core out. It means that the onion's old and starting to sprout. Peel the skin. Then you want to cut them pretty fine. Now you can either do this with a knife or you can use a mandolin. But the direction you want to cut them is this way. Not this way, this way. So you end up with these nice, long, thin strands of onion. Once we've got all our onions sliced, we're gonna fry them. So we've got a pan. I like to use a wok in this instance over a medium-high heat with a decent amount of oil. I'm using peanut, you can use canola, sunflower, and you don't want the oil to be ripping hot. You want it to kind of start at a bit cooler. We're gonna do 2 batches here. We're just gonna fry them until they're nice and golden, and then we'll put them on this tray to drain. Now I know this looks like a metric ton of onions, but they add a really nice sweetness to the biryani, and we're gonna use them in the marinade, we're gonna use them when we layer it, we're gonna use them on top as well. We're also gonna use the oil from these onions to cook our biryani, because it's got a delicious oniony flavor.
That behind you, Joe.
What? Oh, that's my cookbook. If you didn't know, I wrote a cookbook. It's out now, the link's below, go get your copy immediately. It's full of amazing, delicious recipes to help you feed your family or have a dinner party. Go get one now. All right, at this point, you'll be really careful because they'll start to color really quickly. You don't want them to get too dark or they'll go bitter. You want them nice and golden and sweet. Just before you think they're at the right point, you're gonna turn the heat off and then we'll start pulling them out and we'll get them on this tray to drain. And that point is right about now. Make sure you spread them out a bit once they're in the tray, because if they clump together, the residual heat will kind of accumulate and they'll get too dark. These are like pretty good. I'm pretty happy with these. There's a couple of ones that are a little bit more blonde, but overall, I'm pretty happy with those. If they still feel a little bit soft, they will crisp up. We're gonna repeat with the rest of the onions, and then we'll start marinating our lamb or mutton. So now our onions are fried, it's time to get our lamb ready. What we got here is lamb hind quarter shanks. So as the name suggests, at the back shanks of the lamb. So they're quite big, quite a bit more chunky. And I like this cut for this dish because it's on the bone, so the bone adds a lot of flavor to your gravy. They're not lacking depth, that's for sure. So I've got 4 of these hind ones. If you can only get 4 quarter shanks, I'd get 6 and take them out of the packet. And then just give them a pat dry. I don't like washing my meat. Some people do. If you like to wash your meat, go for it. Okay, so put those aside, we'll make our marinade. So in a bowl, Kashmiri chili powder, coriander seeds ground, and turmeric. 2 tablespoons of our biryani masala that we made. About a tablespoon or just under of salt. Coriander stalks and roots, washed really well and chopped. Got a small handful of mint here, just roughly chopped. This stuff's gonna cook in a pressure cooker for about 45 minutes. This stuff doesn't need to be super fine because it is gonna break down. And there goes the juice of a lemon. garlic ginger paste. This is 60% ginger, 40% garlic in a food processor, or you can just buy the ginger garlic paste from the supermarket. So 2 tablespoons of that. Green chili. This isn't actually the chili that I like to get. Sometimes they're hard to find. I like the smaller green chilies, but this one will do. Just kind of finely chopped. Leave the seeds in if you want, take them out if you don't. If the seeds are in, it'll be spicier. And that goes. And then to that, we need our onions, so our fried onions. So you're gonna use about half of the ones that you just made. And then we're gonna use a couple of tablespoons of the oil that we cooked our onions in. 1, 2. Make that 3 tablespoons. And some yogurt or curd. And if you're in Australia or the US, you just use Greek yogurt. Give that all a good mix. Just gonna add a dash of water just to loosen it up a bit, make it easier to get over our lamb. There we go. It's time to get our lamb in. So traditionally this would be made with kind of smaller pieces of lamb with the bone and stool, but they're kind of a bit easier to handle. I like doing it like this because it's just easier for the home cook. You're not kind of dealing with cutting up through bone, and you're not gonna have any bone in your final dish, because once these are cooked, we're gonna pull the meat off it. So it's gonna massage all that delicious marinade all over those shanks. And you're gonna wanna marinate this in the fridge for at least 2 hours, ideally overnight, 2 hours at a minimum. And then all that marinade is gonna go into the pot as well, so. All right, we'll pop this in the fridge. I'll have a quick tidy up and then we'll come back in a couple of hours. All right, so we're gonna use a pressure cooker, and in here I've got some more of that oil from the frying of the onions. Here's our delicious looking lamb. And once that pot's up to temperature, we're just gonna kind of seal these off. And you can only do like 1 at a time in this pressure cooker with this size, but that's okay. Now, in a lot of Indian cooking, they don't kind of seal meat off like we do in Western cooking or in French cooking. But I think it's a good thing to do. It kind of helps to, seal some of those spices and kind of get that meat sealed a bit. So we'll just get those sealed on all sides, then we'll get them in the pressure cooker, we'll fill it up with water, and we'll cook it for 45 minutes on full high steam. If you don't have a pressure cooker, don't run out and buy one if you don't want one. They are handy to have though. You can also actually do it in the oven. So get them sealed in your Dutch oven, put the lid on it, put it in the oven at like 140 degrees or 130 degrees for like 3 hours. It's an easier way where it won't catch on the bottom. Okay, so the last one's got a bit of color on it, and we're just gonna stand it up and get these all piled in here. You notice I didn't give these like a real hard sear, and the reason is I don't want all that kind of flavor and the curry, spices and stuff to kind of get too hot and burn. So I'd rather protect those over getting a really hard sear. In those shanks go, they just fit, that's good. Probably should get a bigger pressure cooker. And we're gonna make sure we get the rest of our marinade in there, and about 500 mils of water. Just want enough so that it doesn't kind of dry out. You don't want too much though. Just give them all a shake just so that that marinade's nice and evenly distributed amongst that water. Try and get as much of the meat kind of submerged as you can. I'll tell you what, it smells pretty good. Okay, we've got that on max heat. Just gonna let that come up to simmer. Put the lid on it, put it on high, and we'll start the timer for 45 minutes once this thing starts whistling. So this is cooked for 45 minutes, and then we've let it depressurize. It's still not quite there. There it is. Woo! How good's a pressure cooker? So the thing is with a pressure cooker, any braise like that, oh look at that, that's beautiful, is you don't actually want to pull this meat out straight away, otherwise it will dry out. So we're just gonna let this kind of hang out in here while we get our rice ready, and then we'll get our meat out and get it into our biryani. All right, it's time to talk about rice. So what we have here is an aged basmati rice. Try and get a good quality one, don't just get long grain rice, you want an aged basmati. It should be kind of a bit more of a tonal color than straight white. We're gonna soak it in water for 20 minutes. And now we're gonna flavor the water that we're gonna cook this rice in. So we've got a big pot, like 5 liters of water, starting to boil. We're gonna season it well with salt. We've got green chili, star anise, some bay leaf, some cumin seeds, some caraway seeds, some green cardamom, and black pepper. We're gonna squeeze the juice of a lemon in there as well. Once our rice has been soaking for 20 minutes and this has come to a boil, we can cook our rice. I've got our soaked rice that we've drained off the excess water and into that boiling water. We're gonna cook this for like 5 or 6 minutes. We're not cooking this fully through, we're just kind of starting to cook the outside of it. Make sure you give it a stir so that it cooks evenly. Pretty much once it comes back up to a simmer, it's good to go. So then we're just gonna drain this into a colander, and I like to put a piece of cheesecloth in it, just make sure you capture all those pieces of rice. Also kind of makes it easier to handle. And I'm actually gonna stop right there, just pull those chilies out before the rest of the rice covers it. Caitlin gets one of those green cardamom pods. Ooh, she'll see red. Just a little bit of water just to get those last few grains through. Take that piece of star anise out, and we'll let that drain really well. All right, time to assemble. So our rice is ready, and we've got our curry or our lamb and our gravy. All I've done is pulled those bones off and shredded the lamb a little bit, but you still want decent sized chunks, so I don't want it like super shredded. You know, we want pieces that you can kind of eat with your hands if you needed to, but you want a bit of texture there. Now we've got our fried shallots, we've got some coriander and some mint, just roughly chopped. And here we've got some saffron and some warm milk. Warmed up some milk in a microwave, big pinch of saffron in there. And this is optional. If you can't afford the saffron, don't stress. Just use a bit of turmeric if you want the color instead. Take our Dutch oven. You need a lid for this. I'm gonna start with a little bit of ghee on the bottom. Just make sure it's completely covered. That'll stop anything catching. Also give you a nice crispy bottom. And basically we want some rice, then we want the lamb, the herbs, onions, and we'll repeat. So the last layer, good amount of the onions, and I like to save some to garnish the top as well. Then we get our saffron milk on. Gives us that really nice golden color on the rice. And then a last sprinkle of herbs. Simply stunning. Okay, so clean tea towel over the top. Lid goes on. What the tea towel does is seals it in. You can also use, so you got an old piece of pizza dough, you can use pizza dough to kind of seal that in. Back to the heat. All right, you wanna put it onto a medium heat on one of these induction stoves for 25-30 minutes. If you don't have an induction stove, you've got a gas stove, you're gonna need to put something in between the heat source and the bottom of the pot, or you're gonna get hot spots and it's gonna burn. Most Indian cooks have one of these that they use pretty commonly. Inductions tend to work a bit better. They have a more even spread of heat, but make sure it doesn't get too high. You don't want it to catch. All right, it's ready, but we're gonna let it wait. We're just gonna be patient. Just let it hang out for 20 minutes. All right, that was about 18 minutes, but I can't wait any longer. Oh, simply stunning. What you want to do is kind of like pull the layers back out, if that makes sense. So, top layer. The rice is beautifully cooked, nice and tender. The meat smells delicious. I like the difference in color in the rice. Some's white, some's yellow. And we get to the nice curry pieces. There we go. Garnish it with the last of our crispy onions, some fresh herbs, coriander and mint, and there it is. Mutton, lamb, durum biryani. Stunning. As I keep getting told in my comments, you've got to eat biryani with your hands, so let's dive right in. I'm not a pro at eating with my hands, but I'll give it a go. If I make a mess, you can scold me in the comments. Yeah, really nicely tender and spiced lamb. That delicious rice with the really sweet onions, a little bit of hint of saffron coming through and all those fresh herbs. That's absolutely delicious. It's no wonder that this dish is so famous all around the world. Thank you all so much for watching. Like this video if you took anything from it, subscribe if you're not, and we'll see you next week for another recipe. And if you want to see the original long format video I did on a chicken biryani, then click this link here. Peace.